When Russia launched a war with Ukraine, some Vietnamese people remembered the war that China launched in 1979. It was also a war where a large country sent troops to the border of a smaller neighbor. After that war, they are trying to live peacefully despite many disagreements. So what is the difference between the war in Ukraine now, and will the end be like the Vietnam-China War in 1979? Vietnam and China have a long history of cultural and political interactions that date back to ancient times. Vietnam has been invaded and colonized by China's Han Dynasty and was under Chinese rule for over 1,000 years. During this period, Vietnam adopted many aspects of Chinese culture, including Confucianism, Buddhism, and the Chinese writing system. However, the relationship between the two countries has been marked by both cooperation and conflict. The history of Ukraine and Russia is also marked by both cooperation and conflict. Ukraine was once a part of the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union, and the two countries share a long history of cultural and economic ties. However, Ukraine has also struggled for independence from Russian domination and has faced several conflicts with Russia over the past century. Too worried about Ukraine leaning towards the West, and its attempt to join NATO is probably the reason why Russia annexed Crimea and then the war that we have witnessed in the past year. The border war between Vietnam and China in 1979 was a result of tensions and disagreements over their shared border. The border dispute had been simmering since the early 1950s, but it escalated in the late 1970s when Vietnam and Kampuchean United Front for National Salvation overthrew the Khmer Rouge regime, which is backed by China. For that reason, China sees Vietnam as a threat to its regional influence and security, and wants to please the West and the US. It responded by launching a military invasion of Vietnam in February 1979. The Chinese forces initially made gains against the Vietnamese army, but they were ultimately repelled by the Vietnamese, who launched a counteroffensive. The conflict lasted for about a month and resulted in tens of thousands of casualties on both sides. The exact number of casualties is disputed, but it is estimated that up to 30,000 Chinese soldiers and 10,000 Vietnamese soldiers were killed. The war had a significant impact on the relationship between Vietnam and China. It led to a cooling of diplomatic relations and a long period of tension and mistrust between the two countries. However, in the years since the conflict, there have been efforts to improve relations, and the two countries have engaged in a series of diplomatic exchanges and economic cooperation. Overall, the histories of Vietnam and China and Ukraine and Russia are complex and multifaceted, marked by both cooperation and conflict. While the relationships between these countries have been marked by tension and conflict at times, there have also been periods of cooperation and mutual benefit.